Hi, welcome to Anna's Aqua Home. I'm Anna, and today we are starting out by making a set of coasters. I saw these really cute coasters on Pinterest, of course, so I thought I would try making them. I've never made these before, so we're definitely going to see. I've done a little bit of research about making templates for a half circle, but I thought these would be really cute. I'm using solid fabrics. I was deciding between an aqua and yellow polka dot fabric or the solids. I decided to go with the solid fabrics, and I'm using this circle stencil as well. This is just one that you can trace for kids. It's a 3.5-inch circle, so that's what I'll be using to help me. If you don't have a circle like that, you could certainly try to use either like a glass or a bowl or something, even like the end of a jar would work to help with your template. So come along with me as I sew today. I hope you'll make some of these as well or get some good ideas. I'm gonna start by making my arched ones. So I have these. Have this fabric, and since my circle is 3.5 inches, I'm going to add 1/2 inch on either side, so that is 4.5. So I'm going to cut 5-inch blocks just to be sure that I've got enough space. And here is my first problem that I come into. My first mistake is I don't use a water-soluble pen or a heat pen. I just used a regular ink pen, and you will see that one of my coasters I had to completely get rid of because the ink showed through so much. So definitely don't make that mistake. Get yourself a water or heat soluble pen. But here I am cutting out the rest of my shapes. I have some in that yellow, and then I'm going to start matching up my shapes. So I've got my sun shape with the background shape. So I'm going to line it up and start sewing. I have not sewn circles before, so this is definitely where it started to get interesting. I figured I would fold the piece in half and find the center, and then fold the sun in half and find the center, match those up, and then that way I knew they would be centered. But then, how do I sew? Typically, I would sew from one side to the other side, but with these, that didn't work. So I ended up starting in the middle section and sewing one direction, and then thinking I could go back and start in the middle and go the other direction. But that also was giving me trouble. So I tried putting the blue fabric on the top as I sewed around. I then tried putting the blue fabric on the bottom as I sewed around, just trying different things. But every single time it did not line up. Every time there was extra. One time I did try to sew instead of going from the middle down, and then I tried to sew from the one side to the middle, and then there were puckers in it. I was just having a hard time. I practiced and I just could not get it. So here's the first one that I did that's finished, and I decided maybe if I just practiced more, it would be better. So I tried pretty much doing the exact same thing on this one, except I tried sewing it a little bit differently, and it still had pretty much the same results. If you can't tell yet, I'm trying to go for like a rising sun. So I have the one that's just peeking over the horizon. I've got this one that's midway up, and then I'm going to do a sun that's completely risen. So here on my sewing machine, you can see I'm just going slow, really trying to work around those curves. Again, I found it the best to go from the middle to the side. It was just that other side. The first side was really easy to do. It was just when I started going back to do the other side, that's when it got tricky and I just couldn't figure out. So if you have any tips or tricks for sewing curved lines, please let me know. I know there are several quilts that I've seen that have like curved sewing, and I really like that, but I've just never made one, so maybe I will get more into sewing curves and circles here on the channel. But until then, this was definitely a good intro. But you see here, it does not line up. I don't know why it was not lining up. I thought I had my measurements correct. I decided to just keep going and that I would trim off the excess once I got finished sewing it. So I sewed from the middle to the one side on this, and then I'm going back, and instead of starting from the middle to the end, I'm starting at the end and sewing to the middle, just as another way to see if that worked even a little bit better. So for my final one, again, to try a different way, I tried just sewing instead of doing two seams. So far I had sewn from the middle to the end, and then the end to the middle. I just started at one end and went all the way around the sun to the other end, just to see how that would work. I trimmed it off when it was done. My final design called for a full sun risen. So I went ahead and cut several of these circles. I'm going to need 2 circles, and then for the background fabric, I'm going to need 2 5-inch squares that you're not going to cut anything off of. So I went ahead and sewed around these circles to make a little sun. I left a little space so that I could flip it inside out, and then folded down those edges. We'll sew over those when we put them on. So that's my fully risen sun, and this was the 3rd design. Alright, so at this point, I don't know if I should continue. They don't look the way I was planning. I think just because of the circle curving, I'm not very good at that, and then because I made my own pattern, it didn't exactly work. So I put them away and aside and worked on another project. And I think I was thinking about just trashing them, but I'm going to go ahead and finish them and see what they look like. I really do like the idea. It just was a really messy pattern and way to do that. So I think I'm going to keep going and see how they turn out, but I'll check in with you at the end and see what I think. I decided to go ahead and give them a good iron, and I will say that really helped them look better, lay a little bit flatter, and just I thought maybe I could salvage this project. So definitely putting them aside and then just giving them a little bit of iron definitely helped. Next step was cutting some batting. I just cut 1 piece of cotton batting for the insides of my coasters. Then it was time to layer them together. So it goes batting, and then it goes the backing fabric, and then the front with the sun. So I did that 3 times. The batting, the backing, the front with the sun, and then for that 3rd design, remember I'm putting the sun on afterwards. So it's just a plain backing, plain blue square, and another plain blue square. I sewed around those, clipped the edges. I didn't get that on camera, so I'm showing you. I just clipped the edges, and then I get to put these right side out. This is where a chopstick really comes in handy, poking those corners out and making sure they're nice and crisp. Here we go. We're finally at the point where they're looking somewhat like coasters. I think I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I get to finish these up. We're going to finish them up by sewing 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch around the edge of the coasters. This will really help them to lay flat when you're using them. As I got to the corners, I would go ahead and put the needle down, lift up the presser foot, swing my coaster around, put down the presser foot, and keep sewing. So you're going to sew all 4 edges of this, and then it's the fun part. After you finish sewing all 4 edges, you get to decide on how you're going to quilt them. So basically, what pattern you're going to sew over the sun to give it that fun sun look. If you're not going for a sun rays, you could certainly just do different, or leave them with just the edges sewn around, or you could just sew straight lines. You could even do cross stitching, so different lines one way and then lines the other way. I just had fun deciding on a whole bunch of different patterns. I did outline quilting, I did some for the sun rays, I did just straight lines up and down, and then for my single round sun, I first had to sew the round circle onto my plain coaster, and I just did this using 1/8 of an inch around the whole edge of my round circle. I wanted to give it that sun look, so I just did lines going across it, intersecting at the very beginning. I think I like this look. I'm not entirely sure, but that's what I went with, and I'm happy with that. So definitely the fun part of this was figuring out how to quilt it. I gave it another good iron at the end just to make sure everything looked good and laid flat, and I called these complete. What do you think about them? I'm really glad that I kept going. I really like how they turned out. It was definitely messy, so I wouldn't maybe suggest using my exact template for these circles, but I will say maybe if you get from this video that maybe you just need to put something aside and then come back to it later, or just because it looks messy, definitely try to keep going and finish it. I don't know. I really like how they turned out, but I hope you enjoyed getting some ideas and watching my fail. I don't know. I think they were a win at the end, but you can let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks so much for stopping by my channel, and I hope you have a great day.